If you enjoyed this program, please like and subscribe. The magnitude of this problem is, wait, but I thought Isaiah 53 explicitly describes the Messiah, and Daniel 9 tells us precisely when the Messiah will be executed. Really? So why does Paul say it's a grand mystery?
Caller, you're live on the air. Please tell us your name and where you're calling from. Antonio, go ahead.
My name's Antonio Reed. I'm from North Carolina. Good morning and shalom, Rabbi. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
Yes.
Okay. My question this morning is about Mark chapter 4. Jesus is given a parable, the farmer seed parable, and the disciples are kind of confused why he doesn't speak very forwardly to people. Why do you tell people parables? So they ask him kind of in private, hoping to get the answer that most people actually think it is, that he tells parables to simplify important messages. But in fact, what Jesus says in Mark is very shocking, that he tells people parables to keep them ever perceiving or ever hearing, but never perceiving and never understanding, so they don't repent and are not forgiven for their sins. Why does Jesus say this?
So Antonio is one of the smart ones. Antonio is very smart. One thing about our callers, they're way up there. They're way up there. Very intriguing question. In Mark, we are told that Jesus asked, why does he convey his teachings using parables? And his answer in verse 12 is so that they would not be able to perceive. They would not be able to understand. And you go, what is going on here? As it turns out, this fits very neatly with the book of Mark, and in particular, the first half of the book of Mark. The strange feature of the book of Mark, and this is most striking about the second gospel. I use the word second gospel and I kind of paused because although it's the second gospel, it is chronologically the earliest. It's the earliest surviving gospel. I'm sure there are earlier gospels written that did not survive. Was survived through Mark and the other Gospels. But one of the strange things about Mark is, this wildest thing about the book of Mark, is that no one is supposed to understand what's going on. The whole thing is a grand mystery. And for the first 8 chapters of the book of Mark, who Jesus is a state secret. No one's supposed to know. And if somebody in the book of Mark, prior to chapter 8, figures out, when I say somebody, it could be a spirit, they're told, shh, don't tell anyone, okay? So that fits very well with the book of Mark, that Jesus being the Messiah is a grand secret. No one's supposed to know. There are vestiges of this theme in the other 3 Gospels, but it's most pronounced in the book of Mark. And the question is, why is it there? How did that get in there? Many of you have watched many of the shows that I've done, and you know that I've shared with you that everything in the Gospels is there as an apologetic, to explain away a problem. It's there to address an issue. What issue would have arisen after Jesus was crucified? That means Jesus, let's say, dead by the year 30. Let's say that's when he's crucified. And at some stage, the notion that the person who was executed was in fact the Messiah, and he died for people's sins, begins to emerge, okay? So what are people going to ask? You have to think this through very carefully. when people started advancing the idea that Jesus is the Messiah, so unlike other people, let's take someone from the modern period. There was a guru, his name is Sai Baba, Indian guru, who was very popular, and during his life, he didn't die that long ago, he was healing people, he was said to be divine, and then he died, and it kept going, and still to this day, this guy who was said to have raised the dead, healed the sick, healed the blind, cripples, all this stuff, he's appearing to people all over the place and has millions of followers, millions of followers. So for this guy who's just died recently, they don't need this kind of text. Why? Because while he was alive, people were saying he was a divine being. He was a guru. He was, okay? But because during the life of Jesus, nobody thought he was the Messiah, no one thought of him in that way, but that idea develops after his death. So what is the obvious question that people are going to ask, people who are not part of it? How are they going to challenge this claim that this guy who was an itinerant teacher, whatever he was, what are they going to ask? They're going to, what are you talking about? How come I didn't hear about it while he was alive? Like, if you're, let's say this conversation is taking place in 34. I'm just making it up. Let's say, because there's some disagreement. I'm not going into why, what year was Jesus crucified. So let's say he was crucified in 30, okay? 6 months later, people are being told by others that this person was the Messiah, but he died. Well, he was supposed to die. Why? Then they take some sketchy text and misapply it. But they ask a fundamental question like, why didn't I know anything about it? Why didn't anyone tell me? Why wasn't there this following? Why wasn't any of this stuff happening? Okay? What would they have to answer? The only answer that they possibly could have given is that while he was alive, this was a secret and only a select few could understand. And not only was it a secret, but if you knew the answer to that secret, you were saved. If you had this, now listen very carefully, if you had that knowledge, that gnosis, you could be redeemed from this pitiful world. So this is very, very Gnostic. The Gnostic movement predates Christianity, although Gnostic Christianity develops very strong in the 2nd century. But the ideas predate it. The idea was that this world was a wretched world controlled by a demiurge, which is sort of a deity of this world, the creator being of this world. Paul refers to the devil as the lord of this world. This is highly Gnostic. This world was a bad place, a broken place, and they weren't crazy. Imagine living in the ancient world where simple things like antibiotics does not exist. People didn't understand why they were in pain. People didn't understand why they were dying. People didn't know if their wives would survive the birthing stool. It was a world of broken bodies and broken wheels. This world was a very broken place. Well, how do I escape this world? You need special knowledge, and only certain people are given the gift of having that gnosis. So therefore, this Mark fits very well with this idea. The book of Mark explains away, is an apologetic, a defense against the charge of, like, why didn't anybody know this? Oh, it was a secret. And when I said earlier to you that this idea, the stench of this idea can be found in the other Gospels, Matthew 16. Jesus is about to be executed, we're told, when he asks his followers who've been around him for a while, who do you think I am? And nobody knows. And when Peter says it, Jesus replies, we are told that flesh and blood didn't reveal this to you. What does that mean? I mean, you couldn't have known. What do you mean you couldn't have known? I thought you were walking around saying you're the Messiah. You see what's going on here? So therefore, the Christian Bible has a very strong Gnostic feature to it. And it is for this reason that literature from the Christian canon that even predates the book of Mark, for example, the letters of Paul, are filled with this idea that there's a grand mystery. And I, Paul, have special revelation, and I can give you that knowledge because it is a grand mystery. The idea that there's a grand mystery no one knows the answer to except me, and if you have that knowledge, you could be saved. It's Gnostic. It predates Christianity. If you think that I'm overstating this, just go to the book of Ephesians as an example. Ephesians chapter 3. I mean, Paul sets this forth that by revelation that's only known to me, we can then expose this mystery. And this mystery throughout the ages has not been made known to the sons of men. Chapter 3, verse 5. It means the mystery that mankind is redeemed through Jesus Christ was unknown. It's a grand mystery. Paul says, in fact, that if the rulers of the generation while Jesus was alive had only known about this grand mystery that I have access to, they would have never crucified him. Do you understand the magnitude of that? Do you understand the problems this creates? If you go to these texts, like in his letter, Paul's letter to the Corinth, he's saying that the rulers of the generation would have never crucified the Lord of glory. They would have never crucified Jesus. The magnitude of this problem is, wait, but I thought Isaiah 53 explicitly describes the Messiah, and Daniel 9 tells us precisely when the Messiah will be executed. You're going to be told that ad nauseum by missionaries that fill the internet. Really? So why does Paul say it's a grand mystery that no one knows about unless you come to me? These are the religions that rely. The word gnosis is a word that means knowledge, but it doesn't mean any knowledge. It's knowledge that's secret knowledge that's only imparted to very unique individuals. Now, how do you create a barrier so that this knowledge is not accessible to everyone? Well, in Mark's view, which is much later than Paul's letters, you just you convey your teachings in using parables, using language, stories that are not clear so that people do not understand. That's why Christianity only superficially appears to be a sect of Judaism. It has nothing to do with Judaism. At its core, it only uses a thumbnail sketch of Judaism, so it uses the word Messiah. But this has nothing to do with the Messiah, because when the true Messiah comes, it won't be any mystery. It's quite the opposite. When the true Messiah comes, please, it should be soon, everyone will know. Everyone will know, from the least of them to the greatest, declares the Lord, Jeremiah 31. If you Christians would stop weaponizing Jeremiah 31 with the new covenant concept, you might pay attention to what the text is actually saying. The whole point of the Messianic age is that everyone will know, from the least to the greatest. 10 Gentiles will grab the shirt of a Jew and say, take us with you, because now we know. The whole point is that everyone knows that there's no mystery. There's the idea of a mystery opposes everything that Tanakh says. And Christianity superficially does appear to be a sect of Judaism. It isn't. It's not an aberration of Judaism. It's none of those things. It is a highly developed iteration of gnosis, the idea that you're living in this very high, Neoplatonic. We live in a very broken world built by a broken God, an inferior God, and your role is to figure out how to escape this broken world, and the only way to escape this world is having knowledge, gnosis. And that's what all Gnostic religions believed. And Christianity is a Gnostic religion, highly developed. And that's why you see these ideas baked into the Gospels and the earliest letters of the New Testament. Thank you for your question. If you enjoyed this program, please like and subscribe.
אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא לעת נעשה בחפצו כל אזי מלך שמו נקרא ואחרי ככלות הכל לבדו ימלוך נורא